Hi there, it's Ian here, and you're watching Grumpy Opinions, the show where I'm going to tell you all about what I think of films, TV shows, games, and life in general. Let's get on with the show. Outlander is a TV show about 20th century Doctor Claire Randall and 18th century Highlander Jamie Fraser, who are soulmates, separated by time and tragedy, now living out their lives apart in the aftermath of the Battle of Culloden. Episode 3, All Debts Paid, finds us skipping through the 1950s and 1960s, where Claire and Frank are just getting on with life, and things seem happy and nice. Brianna's at school, and Frank's jovially trying to enforce a little bit of British culture on her by cooking an old-fashioned fry-up. This makes Claire feel happy, and she suggests they go see a movie that night, maybe The Searchers or Carousel, but as it turns out, Frank's already seen those ones, because, he's seen them with another lady. Shh, he's being discreet, he even says so. Skip forward a few years, and we find ourselves at Claire's graduation to full doctorship. Yep, she's no longer a nurse, she's now a doctor. And she's got lots of pals round, including her mate Dr. Joe, who was on it last week. And they did turn out to be friends. So I was right. Anyway, they're all about to go out to dinner, except for Frank. See, he can't go because, he's got to work really hard on something that evening. And then the doorbell goes, and the thing he has to work hard on turns up. And Claire's not happy at all, because it's kind of embarrassing, and everyone ends up heading off, right past the shameful couple. I don't think anybody has any illusions about what's going on. And later that evening, Frank comes home a wee bit boozy, and he finds Claire angrily waiting for him, and then the pair of them go full Liz Taylor and Richard Burton at each other, although Frank does look a bit more like Spencer Tracy if you ask me. And then they discuss divorce, but Frank isn't having that, since, neighbours next door, who were on it last week, they got divorced, and the husband now never gets to see the kids. So Claire swears that wouldn't happen, but Frank just doesn't trust her, so they're both still stuck. Fast forward a few years and it's Bree's birthday, and Frank's definitely playing the good guy in this mum and dad situation. And then at her graduation, both parents get a happy moment, and that's a good thing, because afterwards Frank tells Claire that he plans to divorce her, move back to England, marry his secret squeeze, and he's going to take Brianna with him, and she's not having it, and they end up arguing a whole lot. But ultimately, both of them really know that it's kind of up to Brianna, since she's 18 now and a grown woman. Still, it's not resolved at all, and Frank takes his keys and he drives off into the night while a tearful Claire gets called back to work for an emergency surgery. And while she's there, she's talking to a patient after the surgery, Dr. Joe comes up to tell her some really bad news. There's been a car crash, and it's Frank, and he's dead. So she goes to the side of his corpse and whispers to him that, actually, he was her first love, and she did love him an awful lot, even though there's a secret twinge there that, he wasn't the one she loved the most. Meanwhile, in dreary 1750 Scotland, the new commander of a prison, a certain Lord John Grey, who we've met before, has been put in charge, and the old commander tells him that apparently there's gold in these here hills, and he should really get to know Red Jamie, or the McDoo as he's known, who's the leader of these prisoners. But of course, that's our Jamie, and shock horror, he's only got a very ill Murtaugh with him in the prison, so we now know that he survived the battle after all, but he's not in a really good way. In fact, he looks like he might be on the way off. So LJ does his bit to get to know Jamie, and it's slow going, and there's a wee bit of resentment on both sides, until a random wandering plot point turns up muttering about gold in a weird mix of Gaelic and French. But of course, our Jim speaks both those languages, so LJ makes a wee bargain with him. He promises to take off his chains and give medicine to Murtaugh if he'll translate and tell him exactly what he says, but only him, because obviously he wants the secret gold. Of course, it turns out that what the guy says is mostly gibberish, but the man interestingly does mention the Mackenzies, and he mentions the White Lady. I mean, could he mean Claire? Jamie's not sure. So next time when the prisoners are out checking rabbit snares, he escapes in a cunning plan. So of course LJ has to send men out to find him, and they end up thinking that he's at some kind of weird castle island, but instead, Jamie ends up sneaking up at LJ when he's going for a pee, and he demands that he fulfills his promise to kill him. But LJ refuses, because he's an honourable man, and he's not going to stab an unarmed prisoner. And he takes him back. He's kind of impressed. And then later, while they're having chess together, they end up bonding over stories of their lost loves. I mean, for Jamie that's Claire, but for LJ it turns out he had a dead boyfriend who died at Culloden. Now, LJ gets really caught up in the moment of sharing, and he gets a wee bit touchy-feely with Jim's hand, and Jim seems really creeped out and isn't having it. I mean, not really surprising considering what happened last time, an English soldier got really touchy-feely with him. Anyway, later on, they end up emptying out the prison because it's shutting down, and all the Highlanders are getting sent off to the colonies, including the now much better Murtaugh. But Jamie gets led away, and he's told that he's actually going to spend his time at a giant place called Hellwater, some great big house where LJ has connections. I mean, is Jamie saved, or is he going to end up in an even worse situation? I guess we'll find out next week. So what did I think? Well, I thought this was really a game of two halves, as it were. because the Jamie storyline and the Claire ones were very different, both in tone, in style, and in the passage of time. I mean, I thought the guy playing Lord John was really good, and the interplay between him and Jamie was really nicely handled. So, I mean, it never felt over the top or unrealistic. It just felt like two guys having a conversation, kind of feeling each other out a wee bit. But I also thought Sam balanced a really fine line, because you've been so stoic last week, but now there's like cracks in the surface appealing. I mean, especially when he finally allowed himself to actually speak Claire's name and he just started smiling happily thinking of her. I mean, that was great. In the 1950s stuff, I mean, I'd have to say that the scenes between Tobias and Kat were just amazing. I mean, it's great to see the actors getting to play some proper range and aging Frank and Claire just a little bit throughout every scene. There's just that little bit more world weariness and exhaustion in each other, and in each fragment of the story, it just seems to build. I mean, I wasn't kidding when I said that there was something kind of Burton and Taylor about that amazing argument scene. I mean, that's got Emmy written all over it. And it goes a long way to show how bitter the years have made the pair towards each other. I mean, as well as the way each of them now gets to wear one face towards the other and a different one for Brianna. It's also really nice to actually see this part of the story, this part of, Claire's life, as it gives us like more context for the reasons that there's this discomfort between Claire and Brianna when we saw them at the end of season 2. There's a bit of friction there. And like the comments made by like Frank about how Claire's never there because of like the doctor school and then her work and everything. I mean, hopefully we'll get a bit more of that as it goes forwards. And of course, I'd like to commend the work of Tobias, because this is presumably it for Frank in the show. I mean, there might be a tiny wee flashback here and there, but maybe not. I mean, but right until the end, he's portrayed him as a man who stuck to his principles and did right by his daughter, if not always for himself, and certainly not for his wife. But he's definitely a less sympathetic character in this period of his life, and I think there's something sad about the fact that he never got to return to England and live a quiet life and feel truly and openly loved by his wife. I mean, it's a bit of a shame for the character, and he's not perfect, not at all, but I think Frank's been an interesting person, probably far more interesting than he was in the books. And Tobias, you did us all proud with both Blackjack Randall and Frank. It just wouldn't have been the same with someone else playing him. But this is Grumpy Opinions. And I'm a picky swine when it comes to TV, so of course there were things I didn't like. Anyway, as I said, I really enjoyed the Frank and Claire stuff this week, but I kind of wish there'd actually been more of it. I mean, I feel that though there was a lot, it was kind of rushed. I mean, it was very bitty, all the bits we saw between all the Jamie stuff. I mean, this was 10 years in a single episode, some of which kind of didn't feel like it added up a whole bit. I mean, take the scene right at the end when Frank says he's going to divorce Claire. I mean, that's supposed to be 7 or 8 years after the previous argument about where they talk about divorce. And yet, somehow, Claire doesn't actually know the name of the woman that Frank's supposedly been seeing. And it's supposed to be the same woman. I mean, speaking of her, she must have had the patience of a saint if she's been waiting for like 7 or 8 years on a married man. I mean, that makes her practically the anti-Claire. I mean, because Claire would wait for Jamie forever, but this woman seems to wait for Frank for absolute forever, even though he's married. I also feel like the scene in the hospital where Claire goes to Frank's dead body was kind of drab and uninteresting. I mean, I don't mean the actual look of the room, but something about the cinematography looked a bit flat and dull and lifeless. And the whole scene kind of seemed a wee bit unnecessary. It was always kind of a wee bit annoying as well, because you're taking a scene about Frank being dead and Claire being upset, and then she has her wee sort of, I kind of loved you sort of speech. But even that was kind of clunky. I mean, it's almost a second slap in the face of a dead man, because she can't even say goodbye to him without the ghost of Jamie hovering over everything she says. She's saying, oh, I always loved you. I loved you first. I mean, he's dead. Just say, oh, Frank, I loved you a bit. I'm really sad you're dead. But no, it didn't work out that way. And going back to Jamie, I mean, the whole prison storyline was kind of mediocre. I mean, Lord John was really interesting, and the scenes of him and Jamie chatting were really good, but the rest of it was just a bit gumph. I mean, the kind of gibbering hookter-chuchter loony guy, what was he all about? And even worse, clearly something major was cut out of this episode because, or maybe it was re-edited around, because maybe it's just me, but the scene when they went to see the island, and they were talking about Jamie maybe being seen on it, and then suddenly cutting to Lord John having a wee in a strange ruin somewhere. I mean, that made no sense. Where was he? Was he back on the island? Was he somewhere else? Where were the rest of his guards? I mean, he's the commander of all these men. He should have a couple of guys with him. Was he back at the prison? Had Jamie gone back to the prison? I mean, what was going on in this scene? It totally threw me, and I was just so baffled by the geography of what was going on. I couldn't quite figure it out. Another sad thing is because we never get to see Jamie actually look for that treasure, we never got to see his disappointment not finding Claire. And I'm sure this was in the trailer, because there was a scene in the trailer for this series where he's running around inside a ruin somewhere going, Claire, Claire! And that looks like that could have been this bit. I mean, maybe not. I could be totally wrong. That could be like next week, the week after, or something else. But it felt like something was definitely not there, and it's sad not to actually get to see his visceral reaction to it. But anyway, it's all going to be changed next week, as I assume we're going to be back to Roger, Bree, and Claire in the 1960s, picking up after the end of season 2. And Jamie's going to be off to his manor house to work, so hopefully, he can have a bath, and Claire can have some kind of happiness, and Roger and Brianna can have tea or whiskey or something. Now, calm down, calm down. That didn't go where you thought it was going to go now. Be nice. So until next week, I've been Ian, and these have been my grumpy opinions. If you haven't already, please subscribe, share this video to pals, and if you want, follow me on Twitter @grumpyopinions. Thank you, everyone. Bye.